Our typical customer is an experienced string player, but they may not have a lot of experience working with sound engineers. I am a sound engineer and I'm an electric violinist, so hopefully I'll be able to provide a little bit of insight to help you work with these cranky sound engineers so that we can figure out how to all be on the same team and create a positive experience for our audience. If you are going to be working a show with provided PA, congratulations. That's really awesome. I love showing up and not having to deal with setting up speakers and running power to lights. It's really nice if somebody does all that for me. Now, the crews who do this thing, they do have a reputation for sometimes being a little bit prickly. There's a lot of reasons for that. But hopefully, if we want to have a good experience and good results for our fans, maybe here are some tips that are going to help you navigate that situation. It doesn't start the day of the gig. It starts long before that. About a week before your gig, you should be advancing that gig. And that means that you're calling the person who booked you and you're saying, okay, we're a week out from the gig. What time do we need to be there? What do we need to wear? Are you feeding us? Which of the stages are we going to be on? All the details that need to be worked out so that you can make sure that you're doing what you need to do. When you make that phone call, you also need to get the name and contact information for the sound company that's going to be working the show so that you can contact them directly, provide them an input list and stage plot. You're like, what is an input list and stage plot? Hang with me. I'm going to help you figure that out. Make sure you send an electronic copy to the sound company and then bring 2 paper copies with you. I'll tell you why in a minute. Don't trust your booking person to do this. I've had that where they're like, oh, you can just send it to us and we'll send it to the sound company. Yeah, that's hilarious. The sound company never gets those. So yeah, send it directly to the sound company electronically and then bring some copies with you because sometimes even the sound companies aren't talking to each other. This is the input list for my band right here. And here's what's on here. There's a bunch of columns here. The channel, we just put a channel number so we can see how many inputs does this band have. It has 17 inputs. That tells them a really important piece of information that they need right off the bat. It tells them each input that is going to be necessary, kick, snare, hat, all these things. And then the third column is, does the band bring the thing that's going to connect that to the PA? And you see over in the second half of that, when we get to the DJ, the band is going to bring DIs for the DJ, for the click, and then also for the violins. The band's going to bring those. This column that says the sound company brings, they need to know what they have to provide for you so they can make sure that they have it with you. All the drum stuff is pretty standard stuff. You can see for the bass, they need to provide a DI for my bass player to plug into. They need to provide a mic and an amp clip for my guitar player. That implies that he will be bringing his amp with him. They just need to slap a mic on that amp. My MD, my music director, is going to need a boom stand, and I'm going to need a boom stand. And then you can see in the summary down at the bottom, that's 6 drum mics, 2 overheads, 1 DA, 1 guitar mic, etc. So that should tell the sound company all of the equipment that they need to have in order to run our show. The next thing is the stage plot. This tells the stage manager where all this stuff needs to be on the stage. When I arrive and I'm ready to start sound checking, the stage manager is going to want a copy of this, and it doesn't have to be anything super fancy, right? There's no fancy graphics here or anything. You can put them on there if you want. They don't care. They just need to know where everything needs to be. And by default, down is the audience, right? So imagine that the drums are in the back of the stage, the violin and vocals in the front, as it should be, and the audience is this way. So that's how this is oriented. That's the standard here. They're going to see that they need, next to the guitar player, they need a power drop. And then he can see, okay, that's where the mic's going to go. You look and see all the inputs on the drums. And it seems like some of this is redundant, but it's 2 different people that are going to have this information. And you want 2 copies of these because your input list, there's going to have to be one out at front of house. And sometimes you'll see FOH, that means front of house. That's the guy who's mixing sound, or the woman or the person who's mixing sound out in front for the audience. And then there will very typically be a monitor engineer that's on the side of the stage with a separate soundboard that engineer will also need this input list. So you might make sure you have 2 copies of these and then 2 copies of the stage plot, because sometimes there's a stage manager and a stage hand. There could be multiple people. It doesn't cost much to print out a second one. So make sure you have multiple copies of both of these pieces of information, your input list and stage plot. Send them electronically ahead of time. Bring paper copies with you. All right. So when you talk to your booking person, the promoter, what time you need to arrive, when you call the sound company after you hang up from them, tell them what the promoter said. Hey, they said I should be there at 3 o'clock for a 4 o'clock show. And the sound guy may go, 2:30 might be better, because they work with a lot of musicians and they know you're probably going to be late. And yeah, be cool with all that stuff. When they tell you to be there at 2:30, be there at 2:30. That doesn't mean like 2:59 musician time. No, it's 2:30. And expect, here's the deal with festivals. It's a lot of hurry up and wait. But everybody feels better if they know that the next band that's going to be here is here. And we want to keep everybody happy. 15, 20 minutes out of your day doesn't mean a whole lot. It does mean a whole lot to them. Okay. When you arrive, introduce yourself to the sound crew. Learn their names. Use their names. Fella. It's really helpful to just write off like, hey, man, my name's Matt. I'm the front man for this band. I play electric violin. Really excited about working with you guys. What's your name, bro? Get their name. Use their name. Okay. Ask them, hey, I'm backing up a big truck here, a big equipment truck. Where's the best place for that? And they may say they don't care. The venue may say we need it over here. Just ask the crew where they want the truck so that it's out of the way, because they're thinking, I've got a band on stage now with a truck. You're on deck with a truck. While you're on stage, the next band's going to show up with their truck. It might help them to have a little bit of control over where everybody's parked. Ask them where to stage your gear, because what you're going to do is unload your truck and you're going to set all your stuff up next to the stage so that when it's time to get on the stage, you can do it pretty fast. So ask them where to stage your gear, and then let them, hey, let us know when you're ready for us. Normally there's a drink cooler right next to the stage if it's an outdoor festival or something. Sometimes that cooler is just for the crew. It's for the sound company. And sometimes it's for the bands as well. Sometimes the venue provided that. And sometimes the sound crew brought their own. So just make sure that and you're not taking people's drinks and stuff. That could start the whole thing off on the wrong foot, okay? For setup, like I said, stage your stuff off stage. Make sure your drum kit's put together, all the tom stuff and the hi-hats and all these things that those people need. They're all set them up next to the stage, and then give the band who's on stage right now, give them time and space to get their crap off the stage when you're done. Make sure you're not out of their way or not in their way. When they're done, you can start putting your stuff on stage. Be as quickly. That's excellent English, Matt. Be as quick as you can. We're trying to not be all day about this. The crew, you're like, oh, they got 30 minutes between bands. If you can be set up in 5, that's going to help them a lot, because they have a lot of stuff to do that you don't necessarily know about. Make sure your gear works. I'm going to take my violin up there. I'm going to plug my helix in. I'm going to set it up. I'm going to play my violin. I'm going to tune it. I'm going to make sure that the meters are reading, that everything's coming out of both sides of my helix. And then I'm going to stand there quietly. If you've got a guitar amp and you plug your amp in, bromp, 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 you make sure it works, then stop playing. Just stand there quietly. Hang out, let the sound crew do their job, let them enjoy a minute or two of not chaos on stage. And then just make sure you got your eyes on the sound engineers. They will let you know when they're ready for sound check. That's the next thing that happens is sound check. You should be standing there. Don't make them chase you down, okay? They're going to go, okay, drums, we're ready for drums. And they're going to start doing all the drum sound check. You're like, oh, I've probably got 10 minutes. Just hang out at your spot. Stand there, don't play, just be ready. When they tell you, play at the loudest performance volume that you're going to use. And if you're using 5 or 6 different sounds, kind of cycle through those sounds so the sound engineer can hear all those, because they're trying to get levels and EQs right. When they say, okay, thank you, we're going to move over to the guitar player, stop playing, just hang out. wait for the monitor check, because a lot of times the front of house person's trying to get their stuff together first. Wait for the monitor check. If they have a monitor board and a front of house board, they're going to have to do each one of these things twice. They've got to get the gains and the EQ set right on each of those boards. Now, generally a crew will try to do those things together. If you're checking kick drum out front, the monitor guy's also trying to check kick drum in the side, unless he's also busy plugging and unplugging stuff. So just, they have a lot of work to do to switch from one band to the other. Be patient, be kind, all that stuff. When they are checking monitors, okay, we got front of house. Now let's get monitors. Okay, play the bass. And bass player is going to start playing the bass. Nobody else should be playing. If you want bass in your channel, just stand there with your finger like this. That means up. I'm going to need bass. When you get to my channel, you know, there could be 5 or 6 monitor channels up there. When you get to my channel, I need it. Okay? So then, okay, I start to hear bass in my wedge. When we get to there, do this. That means I've got enough. If it's too high, you can point down, you know, up or down is going to tell me whether I need more or less. When they got it right, show a fist. Be patient. This stuff takes time. If when they're checking, you say you're checking your violin and you're playing it, you're like, whoo, it just sounds really dull. I can't hear it very well. Be very specific about what your needs are for your monitor. Hey, can I get some more highs in my violin? The thing is, if we try to get too, we got to be able to hear ourselves well in order to play. And we want to have good tone in order to play. But remember, the only person who can hear that wedge is you. The audience cannot hear that wedge. So we don't need to get super uptight about what that sound is. I just need to hear myself well enough to play. I don't have, oh, can you just put, 1 dB more of, 300 hertz in there? They're going to be like, oh my God, we got a diva. Just, it's got to be good enough for you to hear. What's out front is what's important, right? If there are specific needs for out front, during sound check is when you want to tell them. Ideally, you've got your stuff dialed in well enough that they can run you pretty much flat and dry, which means they're not doing a whole lot of EQ to it. They're not having to add a whole lot of effects. That's your job. You should be doing that in your pedal board or any of the stuff that you've got. Now, if you've got a mic on your violin, you can tell them, hey, just go ahead and slap quite a bit of reverb on this thing. It's really going to need it because we're outside. Then they're going to be, yeah, that's great. Or if you've got a mic on there and you can say, hey, this thing really works best if you high pass it at about 250 hertz, they're going to appreciate that information. Don't walk out front and critique the mix during sound check. This is a thing that will make an engineer absolutely furious with you. First of all, they're not trying to mix it right now. They're trying to get levels right. It's all going to sound different once the band starts playing anyway. And if you're out front like, oh, well, I can't hear the guitar. Yeah, we're in the middle of sound check, bro. We're not there yet. And besides, you're listening for very different things than what the sound engineer is listening for. Let them do their job. Trust them to do it. There's a reason they're being paid to do that job, and you're being paid to do your job. You do your job, they'll do their job. It's going to make everybody happy. Stage volume. The quieter, the better. Keep in mind that front of house, here's that FOH again. Front of house needs to be 10 dB louder than what's coming off the stage in order for the engineer out there to have control. So if what's coming off the stage, if he's got the PA off and your monitors are throwing 100 dB of sound off of that stage, he's going to have to be at 110 out front, and that is really loud. Probably the festival's not going to want them to be that loud. So if you're super loud on stage, they're not going to have any control out front, and the people who are paying to be there, and the people who you want to have a good experience, they're not going to have a good experience. So turn down. The quieter you can be on stage, the better the chance that the engineer up front is going to be able to get a good mix. You're going to sound good, your fans are going to enjoy the experience, and you're going to get rebooked, right? So the quieter, the better. This means that generally you should only put you in your wedge. In my wedge at a festival, I've got violin, I've got my vocal, and that's about it. If there's a vocalist on the other side of the stage, depending on the band I'm in, if I need to be able to hear a vocalist on the other side of the stage, I may put a hair of that in there. I've got me and my monitor and pretty much nothing else. Why is that? because I should be able to hear my bandmates' wedges who are next to me. If I can't hear them, it's because my wedge is too loud. Turn it down. That's going to make everything better. The guitar's on the other side of the stage. Well, I'm probably going to be able to hear from his amp or from his wedge. Drums, I can hear plenty of drums. I probably don't really need drums in my mix. I'm standing 10 feet away from the guy. His hands are coming up over his head. I probably don't need drums in my wedge. All that's doing is just making it super loud. Also, be aware that you'll be able to hear the mains as well. You just need your wedge to be a little bit above that so that you can hear yourself. I know I love a super, super loud wedge. I love it when I'm singing. If my hair is moving, we're good. But if we're trying to make the best experience for everybody there, the quieter, the better. Now, you're like, what? Can't we just use in-ears? Yes, you can. Now, this is a lot more work because with a wedge, all you got to do is put a couple things in there. If it's not a perfect mix, it's fine. You can hear everything else. With in-ears, you are utterly dependent on your in-ear mix. So the mixing of in-ear is a lot more time intensive, a lot more labor intensive. It can be done. It's a lot more work. You'll ideally need to bring your own board and your own mics to make this thing go faster. If you guys are used to using in-ears, and I've toured with bands who do, generally we would bring our own board and our own mics, and then we would pipe into their system with our stuff. So you'll need to notify the sound company when you're advancing the gig like the week before and make sure that they're good with that. If they're like, dude, we've got 15 minutes between bands, you're playing for 30 minutes, the view isn't worth the climb. It's just use the wedges. It's going to be better. Or maybe you got a 90-minute set and you got 30 minutes between bands. You're like, oh, yeah, there's plenty of time to do that. We can use your in-ears. Then we're not going to have to fight feedback. Stage volume's going to be lower. Yeah, that'd be great. Bring your board and we'll patch it all up for you. So just talk to them ahead of time if you want to use ears. Surprises the day of the show are always bad. It is really nice if you bring a set list and you provide the engineer with a set list and maybe some basic notes on there like, hey, this particular song starts with a violin intro. Or if we've got multiple singers, Matt's going to be singing on this song, Jordan's going to be singing on this song. So the engineer, if they're not your engineer, they've never heard your band before. They don't know, hey, in this song, there's 3 solos. There's a clarinet solo, which nobody wants to hear. There's a clarinet solo, a guitar solo, and then a drum solo. And the engineer will know. And they're like, oh, okay, well, that's really helpful. Thank you. So make sure, just basic. They don't need a whole rundown of what's going on. They're not going to read all that anyway. Just super basic notes. And it helps the engineer know where the flow of this show is going. And it shows you got your act together. They're going to be way happier with you. If you need a monitor adjustment during the show, hey, I can't hear my vocal. Look over, make contact with a monitor engineer. Eye contact with a monitor engineer, and your vocal needs to come up a little bit. Thank you. Don't start flipping out. I've seen it where musicians on stage, they're throwing a fit up there. Oh, come on, I can't hear my guitar. There's one person up there who can hear your wedge, and that's you. The audience has no idea what your monitor mix sounds like. They do not care. The engineers are not going to respond well to you flipping out anyway. So just hopefully, and the earlier the better, because a lot of times a monitor engineer is going to be super attentive for about the first 10 minutes. They're going to hear 10 bands today. I know you think your band's the best one. It probably is because it's got a fiddle in it. But they don't care. They're going to sit there for about 10 minutes. If it looks like all your mixes are fine, they're probably going to bounce and go grab a soda or something. So pretty early in the show, if you can, try to get your monitor right. Just, be cool about it. Thank them on the mic if they're doing a good job. At the end of the night, hey, thanks, Andy and Sue. You guys did a great job out there. You guys give it up for the sound crew making all this happen for you. That is always well appreciated. It's a very small world. There's not that many sound companies out there. You're probably going to see these people again. It's really cool. It takes very little effort on your part. It means a lot to them. It's going to help you, okay? If you want to use your own engineer, that's wonderful. It's great because your engineer knows what you're supposed to sound like. They know where all the solos are. They know who's singing the song. That's not unusual. Let them know during the advancing process, hey, we're going to bring our own sound engineer with us. Great. Now I don't have to mix your band while your band's playing. I'm gonna go get a elf ear or something. They're gonna appreciate that. However, one of the things they don't appreciate is if your sound engineer blows up their PA because, well, they've got 4 more bands today, and then this thing's got to be off to another festival tomorrow. Be respectful of their gear, and if they ask you to keep it below a certain volume threshold, please do that. And don't be reprogramming stuff, right? Just they'll probably get the sound check for you. You can run the show. That's going to be great. Just be cool, right? Now, the hardest part that we hear from people when they're doing these sound provided gigs with an engineer who doesn't know what the band sounds like, a lot of violinists complain that the sound engineer always wrecks their tone. Okay, so how do we stop an engineer from wrecking your tone? First, you should sound good. When you first plug in, it should sound good. When you're playing, don't play over the vocals. And 3, don't try to occupy the same sonic space as something else that's happening up there. These are the mistakes that I hear violinists make all the time. So when I say you should sound good, when they first plug you in, they haven't made any adjustments yet. We're turning up the volume to go, okay, we're turning up the gain, we're getting your gain. The sound that comes out of the speakers in that moment should actually sound good. So your rig should be set up to sound good with no EQ, no reverb, none of that stuff. If an engineer turns it up and it sounds good, next channel, please. They're not generally trying to fix stuff that's not broken. So if it sounds good, the minute it comes out with a flat EQ and no reverb or anything, the likelihood that they're going to be chasing it down and trying to monkey with it, pretty low. They've got a lot of other stuff to do today. So if you sound good fresh out of the box, and that's your responsibility, you've got a fighting chance of sounding good later on. One of the tips for that is to lay back with your right hand. It gets really tempting when, okay, I sound checked, I'm trying to keep my volume down. Now the band starts, I'm not loud enough. I can't hear my violin because I didn't account for how loud the drummer was when we're getting the wedges set up. I'm just going to play louder. That's going to make your violin start screeching. And that's when the engineer out front goes, good Lord, that thing sounds terrible. And then they start reaching for knobs to change it. You don't want that. You want them to pretty much leave your sound alone. So if you cannot hear your violin, look at them and ask them to turn you up. Don't just start grinding. If you start grinding, it's going to sound bad, and then they're going to start trying to do stuff. The other piece is leave some space. The engineer's biggest job while they're mixing is to fit all these, we got 8 instruments up there or whatever. They've all got to fit together. And if you're playing over other people, when the singer is singing, you're playing over that, the engineer's going, well, I got 2 things happening at once. I've got to get them away from each other. They're not going to start carving up the singer's vocal. They're going to start carving up your violin sound. And you're playing in the same range of the singer. They're going to start pulling out some mids. The only thing that's left is highs. You're going to sound bad. So if you will leave some space and don't play over the vocals, don't play over other people, then the engineers are probably just going to leave your sound the way it is. As with anything, this is not just music, this is anything. Try to put yourself in the shoes of the people that you're working with. Remember, this sound crew, they're the first people in the morning. They're the last people out at night. They have a long, long, long day, and they probably had one yesterday. They probably have another one tomorrow. They never get enough information from people. They're like, we don't even know how many bands are here today because nobody told us. Oh, wow. Oh, okay, there's a glockenspiel quartet that's coming up. I've never even mic'd a glockenspiel before, and apparently these people have never been mic'd before. They don't know. So they're always dealing with that all day. That's why they're grumpy. So if you have all your information for them when you get there, you've advanced the gig the week before. They had your set list, your input list, your stage plot. They had all that. You brought them another copy. All of that stuff is going to be super, super helpful. And you're going to have a great experience. You're going to have a great show. Your audience is going to love it. The sound company is going to love you. People get asked these questions. Hey, we hired a sound company for our festival next year. Hey, what bands were easy to work with for you guys? Those discussions happen. You want your name to come up in a good way and not in a bad way. So I hope that was helpful. As always, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out these other videos we've got for you, and we will see you next time.